Hello everyone, this is Louise Savela again with Rails. I'm a consulting and continuing education specialist, and thank you all for joining in on the webinar today about an introduction to MarcEdit with Emily Nimsakont. We're really glad to have her back. If you missed her presentation last month called The Accidental Cataloger, we have the recording posted on the Rails CE Archives page, and I'll put a link to that in the chat box in just a moment. Just a couple quick technical announcements. Everybody in the audience is muted. You do not need to have a microphone to participate today. If you have questions, go ahead and type those into your question box, and I'll be sharing those with Emily throughout the presentation, and we'll get to as many as possible. You have a control panel here in GoToWebinar. It may be expanded or collapsed at the moment, but the grab tag is an orange arrow in the upper right corner of your screen. You can just click on that arrow to open your control panel or close it, and that's where you'll find the question box. Emily, thank you again for allowing us to record today's program. So, when we're finished here today, hopefully within a few days, we'll get that posted on the Rails CE Archives page. And Emily is going to be back. We know our members need some cataloging training, and next month Emily will be presenting on linked data on October 7th, same time, 2 o'clock, and then in November, on November 11th, Emily will present about BibFrame. So we're really excited about that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Emily. How are you today, Emily?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks so much for being here again today.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to be back. Let me make sure I'm showing my right monitor here. There we go. And start my slides. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Emily.
You bet. Welcome and thank you for attending, everybody. My name is Emily Nimsakont, and I am the head of cataloging and resource management at the Schmid Law Library, which is at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln College of Law. And I'm here today to talk about MarcEdit, which, if you have not encountered it before, it is a really, really great tool for manipulating and working with MARC records for your catalog. You can do a lot of things with it that maybe you can't do within your local catalog system or with your bibliographic utility where you get your records from. And the best part about it is that it's free. It's freely available software that can be downloaded. And so you can do a lot of wonderful things with it. And I could probably talk for a lot longer than 1 hour about it, but I'm going to do my best to just hit the highlights in an hour. Here in Nebraska, we were lucky enough to have gotten Terry Reese, the developer of the software himself, to come talk to us for a whole day about it. So I know there's going to be a lot, and I'm going to just be touching the tip of the iceberg here, but I will do my best to hit the highlights in an hour. If you do have questions, like Louise said, go ahead and type them in the question box, and she will be passing them on to me as we go along. With a kind of a technical topic like this, I definitely want to be able to address questions as they arise, instead of trying to go back later on to figure out which screen we were on. So yeah, definitely don't hold back on your questions. I will say I'm starting with the assumption basically that you know nothing about this software, and so if you have experienced it before, then hang in there, and hopefully there'll be some tips and tricks later on that will be useful to you as well. But with that said, we're going to start with downloading and installing the software. Like I said, it is freely available online. Terry Reese, who is a librarian at The Ohio State University, he has done this as a labor of love, basically, and he's constantly updating it, and it's just a really great tool, and so he's done a lot for the cataloging community. But if you go to marcedit.reest.net, that is where you will be able to download it. There is a downloads link on the side. Let me highlight that. And there is versions for various types of computers, and I think that he has just released a version for Mac. It used to pretty much just be a Windows or a Linux type of software, but he's at least in the very early stages of releasing a Mac version, which is pretty exciting too. So now if you have a Mac computer, you can use that as well. And so theirs is what you'll see on the downloads page. You'll just see the options and choose the one that is correct for your type of computer. And it's a pretty easy installation. It'll just walk you through. There's a wizard, as you know, you're probably familiar with most pieces of software. And so now I'll just tell you a little bit about what to expect when you start using the interface. This is pretty much the start menu that you'll see when you first open the file, the software. These icons, these 8 icons are some of the functions that are available. They are not all of the functions, and you can customize the screen in order to pick the ones that you use most frequently. So you're not stuck with this display. After you see how you use the software and what's most useful to you, you can customize these. I'm going to jump out really quick and actually start the software. I have it installed on my computer, and so you'll see you're getting that screen. And so most of these functions are also available in either the Tools menu or the File menu, so you're not stuck with this. If you go to Preferences, this is where you can pick the ones. You just check the ones that you want and you uncheck the ones that you don't want, and you can have up to 8 to appear on that start screen when you start up the software. Okay, let me jump back to my PowerPoint really quick. Probably an important function to know about is the MARC Tools section of MarcEdit, and you can get to that either from that start screen with the icons that I showed you, or it is in the Tools menu on that same screen. One of the important things to know about MarcEdit that I'll just say right off the bat is that you import MARC records that are in MARC 21 encoding standard to work with it, but when you're actually working with it and editing stuff in MARC, they are in a special MarcEdit file, a .mrk file, and so you need to do what they call MARC breaker in order to break it into this format and then recompile it into MARC when you're done with it. So that is probably what you most often will go to the MARC Tools screen for. You can see it'll show you where you select an input file, you browse for that, and then you tell it where you want it to save. And then if you choose MARC breaker, it will break it into the .mrk file, and then you'll have a chance to edit it after you're done with it. There are a bunch of other things that you can convert from format to format in here, but like I said, this is an introductory session on MarcEdit, so I'm not going to get into all that just yet. That would definitely be more for a longer session, but MARC Tools is the place to go in order to get the MARC files into the MarcEdit format, the .mrk file that you're going to be working with. So this was like I said, most of the functions that are available on that icon screen are also available in either the File menu or the Tools menu. So the File menu will show you where that MARC Tools function I was just showing you was. And probably the other thing you would mainly use it for would be MARC Editor, which is where you can just jump right in and edit MARC records if you've already got them in the .mrk file format. And the Tools menu is where you can select a lot of the options that are available on the home screen with the icons and other ones as well. And this is, again, where you can select, after you see which of these tools you use most often, you can put them on your home screen if you want to. And we're going to be talking about a lot of these functions as we go along. Before we do that, I wanted to do a real-time demo really quick of the MARC breaker function. So if I go to the MARC Tools, which again can also be accessed from the Tools menu or the File menu, and you want to browse for your MARC file. Let me minimize the PowerPoint so it's a little bit less distracting. So let's see, I've got a MARC file here. I'll open it up, and then you'll notice that it wants to save as a .mrk file, and the default will be to have the same name as that one, and you can change it to something else if you like. Make sure MARC breaker is selected, select execute. It will tell you how many records there were, and then if you want to jump right into editing them, you click the edit records button, and there are your MARC records. And this is how you edit them within MarcEdit. When you're done and you've made your changes, you can do the compile file into MARC option, and then you can save it back as a MARC file, either with the same name as the original or something different, and there you go. Then you're ready to, import it into your catalog or do whatever you were going to do with it. Okay, so those were the introduction to kind of knowing your way around the software. It's pretty self-explanatory. I would say that the interface is pretty user-friendly. If there is something that's giving you questions, I will say that another amazing thing that Terry has done is that he's made a lot of YouTube video tutorials that are available. They're linked from the MarcEdit website, and I have a link at, I think my last slide is resources, and so you can have a link to that. But there's very, very good support for knowing how to navigate the software and to do things. So now I'm going to kind of go into what some of the basic functions you'd want to use MarcEdit for. And like I said, I know there's much more, and I'm not going to cover everything, but these are the type of things that I use it for a lot, things that I think are most widely useful for catalogers across the board. So with that said, I'll jump into MARC split is the first one I'm going to talk about, and it's just a lot of their names are pretty self-explanatory. This would be useful if you had a large batch of MARC records, say from an ebook vendor or something like that. If you had thousands upon thousands and you wanted to work with maybe 100 at a time, you can take a large batch of records and split them either into single records or into smaller batches that are more manageable to work with. And I'm actually going to jump out to the live software to do a demonstration of this. And this can be found in the Tools menu, MARC split down near the bottom. And most of the MarcEdit functions are simply a matter of selecting the file that you want, telling the system where to put your destination file, and then hitting process or execute or something, and then it will run it for you. So I have a batch of MARC records. And I will select it, and I will choose, I'm just going to save the files to the desktop. You can save them wherever is convenient for you. Now there are two ways that you can deal with this. You can either tell it to create files of a certain number of records per file. So if you had thousands and you wanted to have 100 records per file, you can do that. Or you can tell it a number of files. So if you had 1,000 records and you wanted there to be 5 files, it would break those up into even files. I think there are only about 9 records or so in the file I'm working with, so I will break it down to individual records. So I'm going to do 1 record per file, and then you simply press process. I have not actually found a use for putting a control field in the file name, so I always say no to that, and you'll see it says 9 files have been generated. And so then I would go to my desktop, and then the files would be there, and then I would be able to do whatever I wanted to do. Work with it from there, or upload them into my local system, something like that. I'm going to actually run that again really quickly and save them someplace where I will be more able to access them. Let's see, actually, let me go here and desktop, and you'll see that these are the MARC split files here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because we told it there were 9 records in the batch that I was processing, and I told them to split it into files of 1 record each, so I ended up with 9 files. So the sort of reverse of that, which again is just what it sounds like, is MARC join. If you are starting with smaller files and you want to put them together, I don't know, let's say you got MARC records from a number of different vendors and you wanted to put them into one batch so then you could edit them all together or something like that, you can do MARC join, which is exactly the opposite of MARC split. So I'm going to take all those files that I just split and put them back together. And let me close this part. There we go. So again, we are in the Tools menu and choose MARC join. And this one you start out by selecting where you want to save them. And so I'm just going to call it MARC join test and select that. And then you select the files to join. Mine are on my desktop. You can go ahead and select as many as you want. I will select all 9, click open, and then process. And so this will be in my documents folder, I believe. Let's see. And there we are, a MARC join test, and it is a MARC file. When I open it up, it's going to give me the option of breaking it into the .mrk file so I can see them. So I'll go through that process again. And there we go. I had 9 individual files, and now it is joined back into one file with 9 records. So if you ever need to get smaller batches of records joined together into one big batch, you can do that with MarcEdit. Let's see, did we have any questions coming in yet? I don't think so. That's good. Yeah, feel free to ask questions as we're going along. Another option that is available from the Tools menu is called MARC Compare.
Yes. We did have 2 questions. I'm sorry, did you not see them there?
Oh, did I miss them?
If not, I can read them to you.
Okay, I can see them now. Let's see here. Let me pop the questions back out so it can be bigger. Where did the .mrk file from the C drive come from? Let's see. And let's see, I'm going to try and recall, let's see. In what, when we started doing the MARC split, is that? I just want to make sure I'm addressing the correct.
I think that question came in maybe on the previous slide. It was before this.
Let's see, was it MARC split? That's when I started talking about splitting a file into how does one create a file on MARC? I feel like both of these questions are kind of addressing the same thing. I'm going to jump ahead with what I think is what you're asking, and if James, if I'm going on a wild goose chase here, please jump in and correct me as I'm going along. As far as MARC split goes, where I selected the file from, it could come from any number of sources. It could be a file of MARC records that say already exist in your catalog and you exported them so that you could manipulate them more easily if you needed to, say, add a field to all of them as a global update and you're not able to do that in your local catalog, or it could be something that you got from a bibliographic utility like OCLC or from the Library of Congress, or something that a vendor sent you, either for ebooks or just any kind of material you get if it comes with MARC records and you just want to be able to edit them in mass. I hope that's answering the question. It's there's a number of different ways you could get these MARC records, and then after you've done what you want to do with them with MarcEdit, you can put them into your local catalog. Seeing another question, after you join a group of files, is there a way to remove duplicates? That is a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. Let me just peruse the Tools menu really quick just to see if there's something obvious I can see. Find duplicate records. There you go. There is a function. And that was not one that I planned to address in my original plan here, but since we're here, that's great. So you can, again, just tell it what duplications to find. Let me find my file of practice files here. I don't think I have any duplicates, so it'll be interesting to see what it comes up with, but so then you just call it whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure exactly what kind of result it's going to give us, if it's going to show me the duplicate ones or if it's going to tell me. And so yes, then you can tell it to remove the duplicate items or save them somewhere. So yes, it does handle duplicates. Okay, I think I see that's all the questions that I've seen coming through so far.
Got one more, Emily.
Oh.
Here it comes.
All right. Are these MARC files from OCLC online or offline save files? Yes, they can be. Yes, that would be one source I would say where you could get them if you are a member of OCLC and you pay to subscribe and to get OCLC MARC records. Yes, then that would probably be one of the primary ways in which you would get these MARC records, and you can edit them before you put them into your catalog. The ones that I'm working with are saved in a .mrc format. I know when I export them from OCLC, they have seen them come in a .dat file extension, and that works as well. I have used those with MarcEdit. So as long as it's some kind of MARC file, I think that most file extensions, I think I've seen text files, .txt extensions work as well. So I think, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think that I can say with a decent amount of confidence that any kind of format you get from either OCLC or from a local catalog, if it's considered to be a MARC file, it will work to upload it into MarcEdit. I hope that answers your question.
All right, that's all the questions I have for now, Emily. Thanks.
You bet. Thanks for flagging me down. Okay, so we did MARC split and MARC join, and MARC compare is the next one that I was going to talk about. I haven't heard a lot of people who use it regularly in their workflow, but I think there could be some very select purposes where it's useful. You can take two MARC files that are similar, and it will highlight for you where exactly the differences between them are. So let me do my example here. I've got a couple of instances of MarcEdit open. I will shut one of those and be a little more compact here. Okay, again, this is in the Tools menu and MARC Compare, and you tell it which MARC files you want to compare. I'm going to compare a file for a print version of a book with a file for an ebook of the same book. And then you tell it where to save it, and it will save it as a HTML file, a web file. Compare, and then tell it to execute. And then once the process has completed, you go to where you told it to save and open it up. And let me drag that here. It's opening on my other monitor. And basically, it just kind of gives you one MARC record with highlights where the two records differ. So in this case, I told it to compare, I selected the print one first, so anything that's highlighted in pink and crossed out, that is something that appeared only in the print version. Anything that's highlighted in green is something that appeared only in the record for the ebook version, and then the rest of the text is comparable between the two versions. So this is kind of something that could just be useful for finding out, I don't know, if your records from vendors are having all the information that they should, things like that. I don't think it's something you necessarily do on a daily basis, but for spot checking things, it might be kind of useful. So it's just kind of a good thing to keep in your back pocket as far as things you might want to do with MarcEdit. Something that I used MarcEdit with for quite frequently at my previous position when I was at the State Library Commission here in Nebraska, we were a repository for federal government documents, and every month we got a file of MARC records from the GPO for electronically available government documents. And I would work with the raw MARC records as the cataloger, but we had a whole department of government document staff who I would want to get input from them on whether or not we should import these records into our catalog. And so instead of making them look at the MARC records, I would use MarcEdit to extract, a few of the fields, the call number, the title, and the URL, for example, so they could just quickly look, and so I would send it out as an Excel spreadsheet. So there are situations in which a MARC file and export certain amounts of it as a spreadsheet, for example, and so that is what I'm going to show you how to do next. Let me shut down MARC Compare first, make sure we're not cluttering things up here. And so this would be under the Tools menu under Batch Processing Records. What we want to do is export tab delimited records. And first you tell it where to start from. This is my batch of government documents. And let's see. Then you want to tell it where to finish it off, or where to save the file. So, and this will be a tab delimited text file. And so I'm going to leave the field delimiter as tab. And then you get to tell it which fields to export. So you can select from fields down here. You can also type in the field that you want. And if you want a particular subfield only, you can do that as well. And then add the field. Let's see, these were government documents, so I would want the call number for that, and go ahead and add it, etc. And 856 for the URL. And so when you add everything you want up here, you can go ahead and click Export. One important thing to know is that you don't have to go through this, if it's something that you do frequently, you don't necessarily have to go through the process of adding these fields every time. If you want to save these for later, you click on this little settings option, select save, and it will give you a screen where you can name the file, and then these will be available. And then when you come back the next month, for example, and you want to do this again, you choose that settings option and choose load settings, and it will have your save settings there so that you can run the same process that you've been doing. And so I will click export, and it tells me where they've been saved. And I will go to Excel to show you them. Let's see here, open. And look for text files. And you'll want to tell it it's delimited because we did do a tab delimited file. Make sure that it's tab. And then click finish. And then I have my title, my call number, and my URL. And so that's something easy that you can send on to somebody who isn't necessarily interested in seeing your whole MARC record. And so that's one scenario in which you might use the function of extracting fields. Like there's probably many, many others. You can also add and delete fields. It's kind of a global edit capability. Instead of, if you have a whole batch of fields that all needs to have some kind of local field added to them, you can go ahead and do this in one shot rather than going through and finding each record individually in your catalog. And you can do the same thing for either adding or deleting fields. So let me go to my examples again. These are let's see, this is actually found in the MARC editor, which I pointed out before as a place where you can go to edit records. I'm going to go through the process of breaking, let's see, actually no, sorry. I'll go through MARC editor. You can open up a file. And these are anything that is saved as a .mrk that's already in the MarcEdit. If you need to, you can go through and break a MARC file into your .mrk file as well. So here are, again, that batch of 9 records that I was looking at before. In the MARC editor view, there is an edit menu and a tools menu and a whole bunch of things you can do with it within the MARC editor. What I'm looking for here is the add/delete field. And so let's say I'm going to use an example from my library of a local field they use here. In MarcEdit, blank indicators are a backslash, so I put in 2 backslashes for that. And this is just where we would use things to describe that it's a state document. We call it our shelving location, Nebraska docs, etc., etc. And whatever you want to add in this field, you go ahead and add it. It tells you 9 fields were added, and those 509 fields that were not there, 599 fields that were not there before are now added to every record. And it's a moderate time saver with 9 records, but it would be a great time saver if you had thousands of records to work with that you needed to adhere to your local standards. As far as deleting fields goes, it's pretty much the same thing. These all have 856 fields for a URL. Let's say that we realize that we just want these records to be for the print version, and so we don't want to have that alternate online version else. So you can go to your tools menu, choose add/delete field. In this case, we want to do 856, and if you want to specify only a particular subfield or something, you can, but you can also just get rid of the field. So I will choose delete field. It says 9 fields were deleted, and now there is no more 856. The record ends with 852. You can also edit fields within batch of records. Again, if you need to take a particular subfield and not just add or delete, but you actually need to change the data in there, you can do that as well. Let me go back to where I was in my MARC editor and open up that .mrk file. Let's see here. So we have 530 fields that say also available as a PDF online. Let's see. I have a question coming in here. I see. Is there a quick undo if by accident you delete something? That is an excellent question. I believe so. Yes. In the edit menu there is an undo. So yes, anything you do, you can undo. And if worse comes to worse, you can close the file without saving it and then just redo whatever it was you were trying to do. Another question is, after making changes to fields, how would you import them back into your catalog? Well, that depends on your local catalog settings. On my system, it's pretty easy. There's an import function, and then you browse for the file wherever it's saved. And I suppose the main concern would be just making sure that it overlays the records that you want to overlay. If it's something where you exported it and you were editing it and then you want to put it back in. If it's something where you download a record from the OCLC and they were never in your catalog to begin with, then I'm assuming it'll be pretty simple to just import them in and you don't have to worry about duplicate records or anything like that. I'm sorry, I feel like I can't speak to this in extreme amounts of detail because it would vary from local catalog to local catalog, but whatever your usual import system is, if there is a way to import a file of MARC records, it should be fairly simple to do. You just have to make sure you know where this record batch is saved on your computer and you can import it as you normally would. Now, I hope that answered your question. Is there any particular concern that I can address in more detail? Okay, I'll keep going while I wait and see if any more clarification comes in on those. Okay, oh good, that sounds like that answers the question, wonderful. So let's say that we wanted to edit the field that says also available as a PDF online. I'm just going to copy that text for use later. And let's say we wanted to not refer to it as a PDF, we just wanted to say also available online. so under the Tools menu, you can get Edit Field Data. And so let's say we are doing a 30. And we want to take that also available as a PDF online and replace it with also available online. And process. 9 modifications were made, and now you'll notice that this says also available online. And so yeah, you can do that. I just did an field data, but if you have a particular subfield that you need to edit, you can also edit subfield data or indicator data. So you can get pretty specific as far as making a change to a very small part of a MARC record. The next thing I was going to talk about is merging records. And this is a little bit different from joining individual records into a large file like we did with the MARC join. Merging records is where you take two sets of records that are basically the same, but they may be a little bit different, but maybe you like one part of another one set because it has, say, OCLC numbers, but you like the subject headings that came with the other one, and so you want to merge them into one file where you keep the information that is overlapped, that's the same, but you also add the best parts of the two sets of files. So the scenario I use for a test for this one is if you have two sets of files, one where let's say you got it from a vendor and there are pretty bare bones records, but they do have OCLC numbers. And then you have another version of those records where they don't have OCLC numbers, and that's what your system uses to match on, so you do need the OCLC numbers, but these are much more fleshed out records, and so you really do want to use these, but you want to merge these two groups together so that you have nice fleshed out records with appropriate added entries and subject headings and everything, but that also have an OCLC number, an easy identification number that you can match on when you import it so that it doesn't overlay other records in your catalog. And so this is under the Tools menu. You want to choose Merge Records. And you choose the first file that you're starting with. So I named mine Merge File 1. And one of these is the list of records that has the OCLC numbers, and one of these are the same records that are more fleshed out, but they do not have OCLC numbers. And Merge File 2. And then you want to select a test or a destination file. I'm going to call it Merge Results. I've done it before, but I will go ahead and replace it because I've done these beforehand. I've had the greatest success for record identifier if you choose MARC 21 here, and I will choose Next. And then you want to choose what it is that you want to bring in from one field to the other. Because it's an OCLC number, I'm going to choose 035. Let's see, I'm seeing another question come here. So it says, if you made changes in the 530 field and some records had no 530 field, would MarcEdit add the desired 530 to the few that had no 530? I don't think so. Using that particular function that I used before, I believe that it would only look for records that currently had a 530 field, and then you might have to go back and use the add field function to make sure to add it to records that didn't already have it. Yes, I'm pretty sure that is the case, that when you tell it to edit field data, it only looks for ones that have, and there may be a checkbox to check or something that says add it to records that don't have it or something like that, but that is not something I personally have experience with. So I guess my answer to that would be I don't think so, but you may want to play around and see if you can figure out a way to do it, because I wouldn't entirely doubt that Terry Reese has made some way available to do it because he's a very brilliant guy and he makes MarcEdit do a lot of things that are useful that people want them to do. And so I'm selecting 035 as a merge field. And this is one that I feel is always a little bit tricky for me. I feel like I sometimes don't select the right options and I need to go back and do it again. So let me find my file here. Merge results. And so I know let's see, I think I did it wrong because it doesn't have the OCLC numbers in it. It just has OC. Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it has. It is the 035 field. Okay, so I didn't show you the two sets of files to start with because I thought it would take a long time. But one set had very bare bones records that did have these OCLC numbers, and one set had a record for the same item that had these fleshed out with added entries and subject headings and things. So now they're all brought together into one record. So that is how merge merge records works. So mostly I've been telling you how to access or how to manipulate records that you're going to end up exporting into your file. Let's see. Oh, I just see another question coming in before I get too far. What did the records match on in merge files? That is a good question. Let me go back and go through that process again. Let me see if I can pinpoint the point where you tell them what to match on. Merge records. In this particular case, I think when I chose MARC 21, I was telling it, I was fortunate in a case where this file had the records in the same order. I believe if you had ones where they might be more jumbled, you could select one of these, the 001 or your 020 or ISBN or your 035 if they did have OCLC numbers already and you wanted to match on those. So this record identifier, this is the section where you choose what to match on. And a related question, does the first, and I think I was kind of answering that as it came in, does the first record from the first file just add it on to the first record in the second file? Yes, in the case where I just did it, I think that's what I did. When I just chose MARC 21 as the record identifier, it simply takes them in order. But if you have a situation where they might be jumbled up, I would recommend whichever one is best for your data. I would choose one of these from the record identifier drop-down menu in order to match more precisely if you don't want it to depend on the order of the records. That's a very good question. Let's see. So I have been mainly telling you how to edit and manipulate MARC records, but I did just want to briefly touch on the fact that you could theoretically use this as a way to create records from scratch if you were in a situation where you didn't have access to a bibliographic utility like OCLC, or for some reason you were away from your local catalog, or you have a very, very minimal catalog where you can't create records from scratch. And so you can use MarcEditor as a way of creating new records. So let me go out and show you that really quick. You choose MarcEditor, and instead of opening up a file, you can choose New, and then you notice it gives you templates to work from. Choose what kind of, you can do an authority record, or you can do a bibliographic record for books, serial, etc., etc. So if you choose book, it will pop out the relevant fields. And I believe somewhere in the settings you can set this up so that it automatically defaults to an RDA template. If you're familiar with the resource description and access cataloging rules, you'll know that there's a glaring error here, and that it does not have 336, 337, and 338 fields for content, media, and carrier types. So I must not have the right checkbox checks for RDA records, but you can do that. And so basically it just gives you a template to work from. And if you need to add another field in, you simply hit enter. All the fields in MarcEdit have equal signs before them, and so type whatever you need in here, etc., etc. So it's a pretty easy interface to work with when it comes to creating new records. Another thing you can do with MarcEdit, speaking of RDA, is that if you have older records in AACR2 format and you want to convert them to RDA, or to have some RDA characteristics to be more consistent with newer records coming into your catalog, they do have an RDA Helper function. I won't jump out to the software necessarily here, because it's basically what you see is what you get, what's on this slide. You just basically tick the checkboxes for whatever you want to add. If you want it to delete GMDs, general material designations, in the AACR2 records, etc., etc., and so then it takes a batch of AACR2 records and converts it into RDA records. I have heard of at least one library locally that they have a fairly small collection, so it was not extremely labor intensive for them to do it, but the librarian there, she actually used this to convert her entire catalog to be RDA compliant, basically. And so if you're ever in a situation where you find yourself wanting to do that, the RDA Helper tool is pretty useful. Another thing that you can do is generating call numbers. This works based on Classify web service, which sort of brings in call numbers from items that are cataloged in WorldCat. And so you can, if you have a batch of records that you want to add call numbers to, you can go ahead and do that. You can choose Dewey Decimal, Library of Congress. Again, it's only as good as the data that's in WorldCat, but it will, base it on classification numbers that other people have used in WorldCat. So there's another option that you can use if you are interested in automatically generating call numbers. And then for my last thing, I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of the newest suite of tools. I'm saving a question here. Are there any National Library of Medicine, NLM, classification numbers? Let me actually jump out to the software really quick and see if that is the case or not. I actually don't know off the top of my head what all the options are. Let's go to generate call numbers. I agree to OCLC's terms of use. We want to add it to all records, choose classification. No, at this point it looks like there's only Dewey Decimal and Library of Congress, so no, it does not have NLM classification at this point. Although, like I said, Terry is always working on things. At this point, I think that's probably actually a limitation that comes about because of the Classify service. I don't think that OCLC involves NLM numbers. I think they mostly deal with Dewey and LC. But that's a good question, though. It doesn't hurt to ask. So the MarcNext suite of tools is probably the newest addition to MarcEdit, and it deals with sort of playing around with making MARC records work in a linked data environment, which is kind of relevant to one of the innovations going on in cataloging these days. As Louis said, I will be presenting in the next 2 months on linked data and BibFrame, which is the Library of Congress's proposed replacement for MARC, which is a linked data technology. So this MarcNext area is a place where you can kind of play around with linked data technologies. I wanted to show off the link identifiers section of this because I think this is kind of a really cool sort of baby step that people can take towards making their MARC records ready to work in a linked data environment. What this does is it doesn't fully convert MARC records to linked data, but it does add in standard identifiers for personal names and corporate names and subject headings, things that in a linked data environment, it's really important to establish a standard identifier for a particular concept or person, and then put it somewhere on the web in a URI where a uniform resource identifier where everybody can access that and find the same information there. So what this does is it inserts the URIs, the web address for these identifiers into a 100 field if it's a personal name, or a 650 field if it's a subject heading, and they go in subfield zeros, and it's sort of a baby step in that someday when MARC records are converted into linked data, these identifiers will already be there, and hopefully something more can be done with it. So let me just show you really quickly. I'll take this same MARC file that I've been working with this whole time, and I'll call it linked test. And I'm going to tell it to add in identifiers from the United States Library of Congress, which is available at their website, id.loc.gov, and process it. And it takes a while. It's on record 2 out of 9. Thank goodness I didn't tell it to go on any bigger of a file, or we'd be waiting a while. But there it goes. And so let me just find where that file is. Linked test. It's a MARC file, so it's going to ask me to break it into .mrk. And if I edit the records, you'll see that a lot of things look the same as a normal MARC record, but for example, in a 100 field here, it has the author's name in your subfield A, like you're used to seeing, but then it has the subfield 0, where it has the link to the identifier for Jennifer D. Schmid, as it exists on the Library of Congress website. Same thing with your subject headings. We have a Library of Congress subject authority identifier for roadwork zones. And so there's not necessarily a lot that our catalogs can do with these right now, but someday it'll be pretty useful, I think. I see a question coming in. How did you get to MARC next again? That's a good question. I currently have it as one of the default options on my home screen when I start up the program. It also is available, let me see here. I think it should be available from, let's see. You know, that's odd. It actually isn't, as far as I can tell, available on any of these menus. Okay, so the short answer is that it is available on the start screen, and you click MARC next, and then it has the link identifiers function was the one that I was just showing you. I will confess I have not explored the JSON object viewer and Sparkle browser very much. Those are technologies that are beyond my comprehension at this point. The BibFrame testbed is a place where you can take a MARC file and it will convert it completely into a linked data file. In most likely it'll be in XML format. If you have any capabilities, any software where you want to do any testing of linked data on your own, this would be the place to go. I have not played around with it extensively, but hopefully in the coming days, I know Library of Congress is starting a BibFrame pilot project now, and so there might be more tools out there where you can have a meaningful experience by converting your own MARC data into a linked data file and then playing around with it. But so if you do want to convert MARC data into a linked data format, the BibFrame testbed is a place to do that as well. So those are the MARC next functions of MarcEdit. And so lastly, before I end and check for any final questions, I just wanted to point out a few resources that are useful. On the MarcEdit website, which I mentioned before, is marcedit.rest.net. Terry has several YouTube tutorials, and that's the playlist URL there. There is also a MarcEdit listserv where you can subscribe and people ask questions, and Terry himself responds to a lot of things. And there's a MarcEdit wiki as well where people have posted a lot of their own experiences with MarcEdit. And if you can't find an answer to a question tutorial or on the website, the wiki might be the place to go to see if anybody else is trying to do the same thing you were doing. Also, Terry is fairly responsive to emails, so I don't think he would mind me putting out his email address here. He has it on his own website, so he really is great at providing support for his software here. That is basically my summary of an introduction to MarcEdit. If you have any last-minute questions, please feel free to type them in. You have my email address there on the screen if you want to contact me after the fact with any questions. And my slides will be available at slideshare.net/enimsakont. I also will be emailing them to Louise, and she will probably make them available to you as well. I haven't uploaded them to SlideShare yet, but I will be doing that shortly after this. I always like to wait until after I give a presentation to upload slides in case I notice any glaring typos or anything while I'm going through, but those will be up there shortly. Let's see, I don't think I see any other questions coming through. Did I miss anything, Louise?
No, I'm just taking one last glance. I think you covered all the questions. I don't see anything new. People are chiming in with thank yous and that this was very helpful. So thank you very much. And yeah, we'll get your recording and a link to your SlideShare up on the Rails CE archives page, and you know, we'll get to that soon. Usually we try within a week or so, but whenever you're ready to share your SlideShare page, that would be great.
All right, great.
And so thank you again for your time today. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see Emily again next month on October 7th for a webinar about linked data. So thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.